It's often said that strong walking bass line construction should conform to a specific set of rules or guidelines. Things like play root notes on beat 1, play chord tones on the strong beats, or even on all 4 beats. Play non-chord tones and chromatic passing tones on the weak beats, and so on. These are all valid general guidelines to adhere to, initially. However, the art of walking bass, and creating music in general, should never be confined to or constrained by a somewhat arbitrary set of guidelines or principles. Regardless of the genre of music you're playing, in a band setting, the bass performs dual functions. It must provide rhythmic support and harmonic clarity. Similar to a lock and chain, the bass is what links the rhythmic backing of the drums to the harmonic carpet of the chordal instruments. In the same way that the bass player must synchronize with the rhythm, they must also keep in mind that the notes that he or she plays can have a strong impact on the way the harmony is perceived by the other band members or by the audience. In other words, by playing notes other than the root note anywhere in the bar, but especially on beat 1 of a new chord change, can potentially make it sound like a different chord. This adds weight to the aforementioned general guidelines for walking bass playing, and by playing root notes on beat 1 of each new chord change consistently, there will never be any confusion from the band or audience as far as the harmony goes. You can imagine, however, that this style of playing can become monotonous and your lines may eventually end up sounding kind of the same. So what can we do about it? Well, by making strategic use of the other 3 chord tones available to us, particularly the 5th on beat 1, we allow for the potential to create lines that are not only more harmonically and melodically interesting, but that also create a sense of forward motion and direction. Your fellow musicians and patrons will pay more attention to your bass playing on the bandstand. And speaking of patrons...
Wow! Nice segue.
If you like these video lessons and wish to support the channel, consider becoming a patron over on Patreon. You'll receive instant access to our growing back catalogue of lesson resources and other goodies. I would really appreciate it. And with that preamble out of the way, let's dive into our featured transcription. We'll be analysing an excerpt from Paul Chambers' walking bass line to the tune Trane's Blues from Workin with the Miles Davis Quintet, released circa 1960. This transcription is full of classic walking bass lines, typical to the jazz blues. I'll highlight my must-know lines as we go along, but we'll kick off with the opening 2 feel. First, let's have a listen. The 2 feel is often neglected in walking bass discussions, which I think is a shame. It's essential knowledge for learning how to provide accompaniment behind a jazz melody, not just during a blues. Chambers keeps it fairly simple with mostly half notes, but already in bar 2 we see our first example of what I'm calling forward motion. Chambers plays an F on beat 3 of the 4-chord E-flat 7. For you music theory buffs out there, we know that the 5 chord in any key, major or minor, wants to resolve to the 1 chord. In classical music, this is referred to as a perfect cadence. There's nothing perfect about it, it's fine, but that's just what we call it. Similarly, the note in which the 5 chord is built from, note 5, wants to resolve to note 1. This is what we see here, and it serves to propel the harmony back to the B-flat 7 chord in bar 3. This is essentially a reharmonization, implying an F7 chord for 2 beats. Chambers could have played a chord tone on the 4 chord instead, like a G or a B flat, but I actually think his note choice is stronger. To further illustrate the strength of this resolution, let's compare Chambers' note choice to the 3rd of E flat 7 G and the 5th B flat. I know I'm spending a lot of time on this one bar, but I think it's worth comparing a few alternate note choices here. Hopefully you'll agree that Chambers' choice of F down to B flat sounds the strongest in this context.
Get on with it.
Yes, get on with it!
Okay, moving on. The rest of the two feel is pretty standard, mostly triad notes. A little bit of quarter note movement in bars 6 and 12. This is a great way to add some extra life to your two feels, by the way. In bar 11, we have a 3-for-1 substitution on the G7 chord, creating this nice chromatic movement from B flat 7 to C minor 7. Okay, on to Walking Chorus 1. Our first must-know bar is in bar 13. This is a walking bass cliché that you definitely should have memorized. The first two notes follow traditional walking bass principles, but beat 3, a strong beat, has a non-chord tone, C. Usually this would be a no-no, but if we focus in on this one note, we may miss the bigger picture context here. This entire bar of 4 notes is clearly leading us towards an E flat note on beat 1. And this is what I mean by forward motion, and creating more direction in your line. This line has a clear direction and logic to it, which matters far more than the absolute note choices themselves. Bar 14, outlining an F7 chord again to bring us back to B flat 7. Bar 16, using chromatics to delay the resolution to B flat on beat 3. Once again, placing a C on beat 1 here, that's sacrilege to the walking bass gospel, but in context it makes sense, so it's actually sacrilegious.
Sacrilegious.
Bar 21, must-know line number 2. You'll see this bass cliché everywhere. Everyone plays it. The same arrangement of intervals can also be played over dominant 7th chords, like in bar 22. Bars 23 and 24. This is a must-know for your turnarounds. Alright, moving on to chorus 2. We're walking up the neck now. Chambers ignores the 4 chord, E flat 7 here, and instead implies the 5 chord again, F7. Bar 30, another perfect cadence to the note F. Using fifths in this way can create a sense of incompleteness to your lines, thus creating more forward motion. Bar 32, a succession of perfect cadences played as ascending fourths, propels us really quickly to C minor 7. Ray Brown played lines like this all the time. Bar 34. Hey, it's must-know line number 1 again, this time over F7. And finally, the last 2 bars of chorus 2 are identical to the first 2 bars of chorus 1, but over completely different chords. I think you get the idea by now. Chambers is putting aside the exact harmony in favor of a clear, logical line that leads us to a desired note. In this case, a high B flat at the start of chorus 3. Moving on to chorus 3, we have must-know line number 4. For this line, you can play the B flat as written or 1 octave lower. This line is very cliché and can be played during the turnaround too, which can be seen at the end of chorus 4. Bars 45 to 46, targeting the 5th of F7, delaying the resolution to the root note. Bars 47 to 48 is must-know line number 5. In the first bar, Chambers plays open strings to easily shift positions to the middle register of the bass. In the second bar, he makes clever use of half steps and chromatics targeting the 5th of B flat 7 at the start of chorus 4. There are 3 more choruses notated for our featured transcription, but I'll leave those for you to decipher. In closing, to create forward motion in your bass lines, think about playing melodically rather than merely harmonically. Actively strive to create melodies with your 4 quarter notes instead of just playing the changes. Play chord tones other than the root note on beat 1, especially the 5th. As we've discussed, the 5th is synonymous with creating tension and a sense of incompleteness, which will drive your lines forward. Learn some cliches. Study the must-know bass lines discussed in this video and get them into your playing. Finally, make a real effort to learn complete transcriptions, whether it be for walking, bossa playing, ballads, or solos. This will give you a deeper understanding of melodic bass playing and open your ears to new ideas. That's all we have time for in this lesson. Once again, if you enjoyed the lesson, do consider supporting my efforts on Patreon, and I'll see you next time. Take care.